Okay, thank you, Scott, for the introduction. And I thank you for hosting me. Unfortunately, just in a virtual way, would like to be there. And also thank to Claudia and Francesco for inviting me, of course. If you look at the title, well, maybe it may seem quite strange because there are two very apparently different topics. On one side, you have a Brazilian contemporary architect, Paulo Mendes da Rocha, who was born in 1928, who has died last year, and has built great works, especially between the 60s and the 90s of the last century. And on the other one, you have an Italian wonderful city that apparently has nothing to do with a Brazilian contemporary architect. I mean Venice, of course, with its architectural masterworks, for example, San Giorgio Maggiore, San Marco, and then its equally remarkable urban fabric. So why to put together these different topics? Give me just a few minutes and I will try to explain you why. Just like Scott has told, I am not a scholar of Venetian architecture, but I am a scholar of Paulo Mendes da Rocha. I've written a book. This is the English version, and it has the research that led me to the book has been one of the most incredible experiences as a researcher in my life. I spent years talking with the architect, and I had the keys of the office, so I could go there alone and open the shelves, look at the drawings, take them home to make a scan. So it was an incredible opportunity for me. And so I had the opportunity just not to study the most precious, let's say, materials, documents, just like the drawings, but also the poor ones, let's say. For example, annotations, strange documents, letters, objects. Yes, I could literally open every shelf in his office, and I could open the books he had and look at, for instance, the annotations he had done in these books. I could see all the postcards, for example, that he had kept from his past. And so even after publishing the book, I have shown you the cover, there was, and after writing many more articles, essays, I organized an exhibition in Milan, the Triennale, about Paulo Mendes da Rocha, but there still was something I had to write about him. And this had to do with Venice. So what I'm going to tell you in this talk is something I have already written about. And so I will try to give you a very short introduction to this research. Venice and Paulo Mendes da Rocha. Look at the on the right of this the interior cover, which the lion that is in Piazza San Marco. This is quite a I don't know if obsessive is too much, but a continuous presence in Paulo Mendes da Rocha's thought and imagination. You can find it very many times. And why is that? Why the lion in the Piazzetta of San Marco? What I'm trying to do, we could say that the whole lecture is about finding a double key. One is a key. One is the first thesis we could say is that Venice is an incredible key to Mendes de Rocha's thought. But the second key, that is the most important for us today, you are interested in Venice today, not so much in Paolo Mendes de Rocha. So the second thesis is that Mendes de Rocha's thought about Venice is a key to understand Venice. So follow me, please, in what I'm going to say in the first 20-30 minutes, because we are getting there. We're trying to learn from his point of view on Venice. This is my aim. We also need, this is the third key, to get there to this interpretation of Venice. And my proposal is to start here from a proposal by Mendes de Rocha for the city of Montevideo, dating back to 1998. So this is a project we could also say we know not so much about. On the contrary, there are very few documents on this design. It was developed with the students of the Universidad Nacional de Montevideo. It was a workshop, and Paulo Mendes de Rocha remained there for a couple of weeks. So we cannot expect a really developed project. It is just a sort of idea of manifesto. I was telling to you that we have very few documents. This is one of them, but this is not by Mendes de Rocha. This is a sort of synaptical table made by the students. So every student places here in this map of the Bay of Montevideo. This is the Bay of Montevideo. Can you see the? I don't know. On the right is the city and the port, the harbor. Every student places his actual project in the right position. So this has nothing. This table has not so much to do with Paulo Mendes de Rocha. As far as I know, we have just two drawings about this project. This is one of them. This is he donated this one to the Beaubourg in Paris, and on one side you have the bay, how it will become after the acceptance of his proposal. With a new enormous pier on the right, and look in the middle of this drawing. It is just an A4 drawing, so it's very little. Just in the middle, you have this little square. You can read maybe teatro, theater. If I tell you, I think that you can imagine, you can figure out that the word is theater. And this is a very important part of his proposal. On the back, well, maybe you cannot see here very well, but you can see it's about more or less the same. In this second drawing that is in my possession, where you have a detail of the island, over there, there is an actual island in Montevideo Bay. It's called Isla de las Ratas, Rats Island. Maybe it's not such a wonderful place now, if this is the name, but the idea was to, on one side, it was to transform the land and to build a theater on this island, but also building a roof. You can see it in the a roof, probably a metal roof, supported by pillars without foundations, because they are loaded by both. You can see it at the two sides. So I just want to say, I don't want to focus very much on this project. I just want to say that there is a double strategy in this project. On one side, the transformation of land. On the other side, a floating structure. The two together, the two strategies together. These are representation of up the bay as it was before the design, and down as it will be after the acceptance of the proposal. As you can see, the bay, there is an enormous big pier on the right, and the whole bay turned almost square in a way. And then there is the island. I think that you can see in the that a four shapeless island is transformed into a square, bigger island that will be the theater. But well, this is just the key. This is just a sort of, I could say, an excuse to wonder about the role of Venice in Paolo Mendes de Rocha's imagination. Why Venice? What has to do Venice with this project? Well, if you read his words about this project, you face the presence, the continual presence of Venice. And this was the question I had when I first started reading all of his words about this project. Why Venice? What has to do Venice with a project for the capital city of Uruguay? For instance, he said that this project has quite a Venetian perspective on the relation between man and nature. Or in a German publication, and so, and this way, a sort of water piazza would arise, the variation or the possibility of a Venice for Latin America, or a square water piazza. In the little eccentric island, of course, it is the theater. In this new geography, a theater, learning from Venice. And once more, in the bay, in a magnificent eccentric position, there is a little island, which is transformed in the Venetian way in a theater. So why this insistence on Venice? Why every time he talks about this project for Montevideo, it talks about Venice? Why the constant presence of Venice in his thought and imagination? And especially why these words, Little Island, which is transformed in the Venetian way in a theater. I told you that I am not a scholar of Venetian history of architecture, but I have studied in Venice. I have made a PhD in Venice. I have been professor in Venice, and I live in Venice. And I can tell you that there is no island transformed in a theater in Venice. So why does he talk about that? Why is that? Let's try to look at Venice and see if we can find any track of any clue to understand what is trying to say. Venice is waters and theater. This is was especially, but still is a naturally strong tradition. This is true. especially during the 16th century, there was the tradition of the so-called teatri del mondo, theaters of the world. They were boats, but boats, this is one of them, with a strong architectural characterization. You can see pediments, columns at home. So they were, let's say, architectural boats who were built, were built, constructed for special celebrations, and they used to go along the Grand Canal and get finally to San Marco Square. This is one of them at the arrival of its path. This is a tradition that has lasted about 1 century in 16th century. But it is a tradition that had also some influence in contemporary architecture, with the same name, Teatro del Mondo. Aldo Rossi, of course, constructed in 1979 the most famous Teatro del Mondo of all times. That is the one he designed for the first Biennale of Architecture in 1779-80, and that docked more or less in the same place as the ancient Teatri del Mondo. But this is just a very partial answer, because if you recall the project for the island in the Bay of Montevideo, it was there was an ephemeral and a floating structure, but the main part was the transformation of land. But all of this is missing here, so this is not this cannot be the reference, or this cannot be the only reference, at least. As with regard to the square water piazza, Mendes de Rocha talks about, speaking about Montevideo, this is easier, much easier, because you have something like that in Venice. It is the Bacino Marciano, so the water, the surface of water in front of Piazza San Marco. Maybe, and that has been a very important place during history for spectacles. So in a way, it has something to do with theater, or at least show, spectacle. For example, in 1998, just to remain next to our times, in this very same place, a concert by Pink Floyd has taken place. It is the very place where the Teatro del Mondo used to arrive. And here you can see in the back, there is San Giorgio, on the left, Palazzo Ducale. And this was the arrival point of the ancient Teatro del Mondo. So you have, it's quite strange, because the ancient Teatro del Mondo, Aldo Rossi's Teatro del Mondo, the spectacles like Pink Floyd's concert, all has taken place more or less in the same place, in front of Piazza San Marco, in the center of this image. But one more time, we lack, we haven't found yet the island transformed in the Venetian way in a theater, as Paolo Mendes de Rocha said very many times. There is an island here, but it's not an island transformed in a theater. There is this Teatro Verde built in the 50s, just behind San Giorgio Square. But the only island transformed in Venetian way in a theater that I know in the whole history of Venetian architecture is not a proposal, a design that has been not taken into consideration. It has not been built by a nobleman from the Venetian countryside in one more time, dating back to the 16th century, Alvise Cornaro, who proposed to construct two new islands in the same place. It is always the same place, San Marco, San Giorgio, Punta della Dogana. One of them on the left would have been a theater, and the other one on the right, an artificially natural, something like that, island to walk in front of the monuments of the city. What is most interesting of this proposal is that where he proposed to construct a theater, there actually were a few sandbanks. So this could be something like an island transformed into a theater. But, well, did Paulo Mendes de Rocha knew this proposal? This is something we don't know. I investigated all of this, and today I will not try to explain to you my conclusions, because we have not the time and the space to do it. I just tell you that the book where I've taken from this image from doesn't seem to be in Paulo Mendes de Rocha possession. In his office in his home, there wasn't this book. He has other books or texts by Manfredo Tafuri about Venice or about other topics. This is Manfredo Tafuri is a Venetian historian of architecture. For instance, he has this book, and this is a very interesting thing, because this is a cardboard cover box for the book made by Paulo Mendes de Rocha for this book by Manfredo Tafuri, where you can see the lion in San Marco Square in Venice. But the truth is that he hasn't this book, or, well, he has lost, maybe, we don't know. But this doesn't matter. This is for me, this is very important as an historian of architecture. So I have studied all of this. But for today's lecture, we can try not to deepen this aspect, because what we are trying to understand is something different. We are betting that thinking about Paulo Mendes de Rocha's ideas about Venice is a way, and the most direct way to understand how his imagination works, what it focused on. And so we can try to give an answer to this question by asking ourselves, what is Venice, but what is Venice to him? Which is Venice? What does it mean for Venice when he says Venice? This is a question that we can actually answer. Is Venice, or is Venice? Not really. Let's try to listen to his words. This time, as you will see, they are quite clear. Let me read this quotation. Venice, he said once, is a very interesting example to me. not the Venice praised because of the beauty of its palaces, but seen as a new geography. Its great beauty is exactly what is revealed by this episode. The Venice Lagoon was the most inadvisable place to raise a city, a port. It was necessary to map out new designs by configuring the canals to perfectly level on the small islands that dotted the water, to employ techniques and make experiments never before applied on such a grand scale. Later, in order to make the city's beauty stand out, the palaces were built as if by someone wishing to praise his own work. So, what is Paolo Mendes de Rocha's idea of Venice? Well, we cannot say that this is totally absent. But if you want to understand what he thinks about Venice, you have to consider this kind of image together with this kind of image. So Venice as it is now, or better, how it has become because of the work of men, but also to consider what was there before Venice. Because the most relevant part of Venice's history to Paolo Mendes de Rocha is not the construction of a series of architectural masterworks, but in first place, and especially, the construction of land, of the territory on which later to build these architectures. So maybe the most important works in this text are Venice seen as a new geography. So not just the architectural works, the single architectural works, and not just the architectural, the urban fabric, but before that, the construction, Venice as an example of construction of a new geography. This is not the only time, of course, he talks about this. There are is plenty of quotations of this kind. I just quote a couple of them, but I could have quoted many more. Just one more example. Venice is not a complex of palaces or buildings. First and foremost, Venice is a sublime manifestation of the human will in relation to nature, and in particular, against the hardships of nature. When this is quite a good image, maybe to start understanding something about this. You can see on the back, you can imagine that what you see in the back is the original condition of the Venetian lagoon. Sandbanks, mosquitoes, and nothing else. In the first plane, you can see an island that is not city. It's just an architecture, maybe an agricultural island. Maybe not. There is a villa here with a garden, but you can see the difference. On the back, you see sandbanks. In the front, you see something different. There is land, but this land, the ground is not natural. The ground is artificial. Everything is artificial in Venice. And this is why probably Venice was so important for Paolo Mendes de Rocha, because of his idea of architecture. He used to say that the aim of architecture is a planet which is inhabited and modified as a new nature. And this is what we can find behind his architecture and in his architecture. This is not the topic of my lecture today, but if you look at his works, you can feel that the importance of working, of manipulating, you may say, the land, the ground, giving it a new shape. The target of architecture for Paolo Mendes de Rocha is to make visible the human ability in transforming nature. And architecture, therefore, as a representation of what man could and should do in relation to nature. I just show you a few images, but this is not what I want to talk to you about today, because what is important to us today is that maybe, this is my I hope at least that this long path that we have done from Venice to Brazil and Uruguay can help us see Venice with new eyes. And what do I mean for that? Let's consider, for example, this map of Venice, dating back, as you can see, more or less to the same years of the Teatri del Mondo, 16th century. When you think of Venice, I think that you too, me too, some years ago, you think at Venice as a big island crossed by canals. Well, this is not correct. This is not true. Because Venice, the history of the city of Venice is completely different. As I already told you, Venice has burned as a in the same place where Venice was built and constructed, there were just sandbanks. So when you look at the city, you must not think at Venice as a big island that has been cut over the centuries in order to have canals. But it's the exact contrary. Venice has burned and developed over the centuries as a series of 1,000 sandbanks. Each of them has become an island and has grown up over the centuries until reaching the next island. So Venice is not a big island where canals have been cut, but the process that has taken place is the opposite. You have to conceive the canals as what remains of the original condition. It was almost all waters, and the canals is what has remained water now. The city is the consequence of a huge operation of filling, of infill, of construction of territory. So now everything is full, but once it was almost empty. So you must imagine the construction of Venice just as a, well, maybe Paolo Mendes de Rocha in this is right, hit the point, as a new geography, as an enormous territorial operation. Of course, we don't know, we have no images how Venice was before Venice, but there are parts of the lagoon still quite almost in natural conditions, so we can we can figure out the original condition of the lagoon. And it was something like that. So where you see today San Marco or San Giorgio or Punta della Dogana, you must know that it was more or less like that, or like that, or like that. This was Venice before Venice. The main technical device, we may say, to make all of this possible is something quite, well, simple, but equally important. Because anytime you walk in Venice, you must know that you are walking in something artificial. There was no land. The land has been transported there, and not just transported because it is finally sand. So it must. You have to oblige the sand to remain in a stable condition, and you just can do that through the using pile foundations. When you walk in Venice, not just under the palaces, but just also under the streets, you walk on millions or maybe billions of pile foundations. Everything is a pile foundation in Venice. Everything is artificial. So when you walk in Venice, you must know that you are just like in a sort of iceberg. The most of what really matters is invisible. You cannot see it. It exists. You must know that it exists, but you must know that it's not visible. You just walk, but under you, there are billions of piles. So let's go back to Paulo Mendes de Rocha's works. When he, well, maybe it's not in my lecture, I didn't try, I couldn't, and I didn't try to clear all the aspects I have focused on. But, and for example, why it talks about a little island which is transformed in the Venetian way in a theater, maybe this is not totally clear, but what is clear now, I think, is what is to him the Venetian way. So let's leave aside which island was transformed in Venice in a theater, but there is a Venetian way, not just Venetian, of course, but that for Paulo Mendes de Rocha is Venetian. And there is also at least we can understand why he talks about a Venetian perspective on the relation between man and nature, and why when he talks about Venice, he says this new geography. Venice to him is a paradigm, the paradigm of man's capacity of transforming nature. So Venice is an example, a model, and as such, you cannot copy Venice. You can learn from Venice, you may say, but you cannot copy Venice. This is his point of view. Our point of view is that maybe for him is a paradigm, but this way of looking at Venice, of considering Venice, could be a key also for you to consider Venice. Or maybe this is what I hope. And of course, how to take advantage of this kind of this way of considering Venice, of course, this is up to you. And well, that's it. I did it very quickly, maybe too much.
You caught me unawares with my microphone switched off, Daniele. Thank you very much for the lecture. I'm going to see if there are any questions in the chat and both on the floor here, but I'm going to lead with the obvious one. And that is, I assume no, the answer will be no.
I cannot listen very well. I don't know why.
Can you hear me now? Is that better?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. Did he ever make a proposal for Venice? Can you hear me?
I think that, well, you asked me if he made a proposal for Venice. This is your question.
If there's anything on record.
I really cannot, I don't know why, I really cannot understand what you say, but if this is the question, the answer is no. He had gone to Venice very many times. I didn't show you, but it could have been interesting. But well, I have to be. The time was short, so. But in 2000, he has taken place to the Venice Biennale, and he was one of the two architects invited in the Brazilian pavilion, and one of the projects he has shown was the one for the Montevideo Bay. But there are no actual projects for Venice. You must also consider that Paolo Mendes de Rocha has won the prize. Now is quite famous, but he had a very little office in São Paulo. He has built a few projects. He has died that when he was 90 years old, and he has built about 70, 80 works in his whole life. Not so many works, and almost all of them in São Paulo. Now, recently, he has built the Museo dos Coches in Porto, but that's the only important work abroad, you may say. And so his discourse is, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, okay. No, his discourse and his ideas are important worldwide, but he was a local architect, not giving a bad, well, not in the bad way, but he just worked for his city. So it's not strange that there are no designs for Venice. In the last years, he was invited to make the Serpentine Gallery project. There is something in this direction, but almost all of his work is for São Paulo. So it's not strange that there is nothing by him about Venice, not a proposal for Venice. But there is no proposal for Venice, no project for Venice. The answer is no.
I have another one for you.
Yes.
And that is, do you know when was the first time that he went to Venice? And if at that moment there was any register of his love affair with Venice in work that was produced at that time. So can you isolate the moment when perhaps Venice became present in his architectural work?
This is a very good question, and the answer, unfortunately, is no. But as far as I know, well, because if you think about it, what he find in Venice, he could have found also in other places. For instance, Holland could be something similar. The idea of transforming nature in order to create a better habitat for man. So, well, without the architectural masterworks of Venice, but it could work. I think that Venice, considering the document I have, well, we don't have diaries or something like that by Paolo Mendes da Rocha. So the documents we have are not systematical. You have a postcard dating back to the, I don't know, 1985. Then you have a notebook that you know that is both in 2002 and so on. So you have just a few points, and you must try to make a constellation with these points. But it seems to me that Venice became the paradigm at quite late, the last years of the last century, more or less in the 90s, let's say, when he started to develop a series of projects at a different scale, that is at a urban scale. And this is something he started to do just quite late in his career, because in the 90s, he already was more than 60 years old. So in the first part of his career, there are no urban scale projects. When he started to reflect at this scale, I think this is when Venice became an example to him. But if you ask me to date exactly all of this, I cannot do it. I am not able to do it. But I am sure that you have no proofs, and you have no even clues to make a more precise hypothesis. So I think that this is your question is very correct. It's very intelligent, but I think that it's not possible to give an exact answer, a precise answer.
Okay, and that makes me think as well that you left one of your own questions open that you asked at the beginning of the lecture, and that was why the Venice lion proliferates across his research. We never got an answer to that. What's your impression?
Okay, this is quite well. This time maybe I can give you an answer. Simply because Venice was the answer to many of the main issues of his thought. He was looking for an example of a virtuous work or transformation of nature, not because man transforms nature every day, but a huge work or transformation of nature, of land, that was virtuous, that was not a destruction, but it was literally a construction of a wonderful, incredible place where to live. And so Venice, Paolo Mendes da Rocha thought it is not an obvious, but a very, it is an encounter that works very well, because Venice represents the idea of architecture by Paolo Mendes da Rocha. So, and this is why I've chosen Venice to talk about it, because in my book, the issue was how knowing his idea about Venice helps us understand Paolo Mendes da Rocha's thought. Today, I try to make the contrary, to use his Paolo Mendes da Rocha's thought to understand Venice. But the fact is that Venice is what architecture should be for Paolo Mendes da Rocha. So why this obsession is too much, I know, but I cannot say it well better. By Paolo Mendes da Rocha for Venice, this is quite easy, I think, to explain, because Venice is the example of what an architect should do, not just to build a box with beautiful windows, but to make something bigger, to build, to destroy an habitat for man. So much more than just a little box in the periphery of the city. So for me, this is quite clear. I hope also for you. I don't know if I convinced you, but this is, well, in this case, I think that this is the answer.
Thank you, Daniele. Now we have, I believe, one question in the chat. No, we have it live.
Hi, Daniele. Thanks for the lecture. We've just got a question for you to elaborate on some of the points you made earlier at the start. So this was obviously about the relationship with the proposal for Montevideo and with the theatre within the as part of the scheme, and also the relationship between that and, of course, his obsession, to put it in a way, of the landscape, of the geography. So what is the relationship within his work between the theatre and you know, the idea of the object versus the idea of the landscape? And is there one that proliferated throughout his work?
Good question. No, I think that the theater is not so important to him. So you can find some of them, but the point is not the theater for him. It was not in Italian architectural culture in the second part of the 20th century. The theater is everywhere, for example. So I know very well all of this. But in Paulo Mendes de Rocha's work, you cannot find very many theaters, and the theater is not something he was especially interested in. So, and this was one of the clues I had in order to question myself why, when he talked about Montevideo Bay and the transformation on an island into a theater, why all of that was linked to Venice. But it must be clear that their interest was in the transformation of the island. This is a topic that is a red thread in Paulo Mendes de Rocha's thought and work, but not the theater. This is not so important, so relevant for him. It was, I don't know if it was a coincidence or it has to do with Venice. Well, I could show you, if I would have more time, all the clues I have about this. But no, it was not the theater what was interested in. We know this. We can be sure about this.
Great, thank you. And I think just a follow-on kind of, I think this is more of a comment than a question, but maybe if you can elaborate further for me. I think what's really interesting over the last few lectures that the point of authenticity always comes up. And that's about, you know, what is the authentic Venice? And this, you know, this is discussed from a historical point, from a purely, you know, aesthetic point, from facade design, from all these kind of things which make up what the image of Venice is. And it's really interesting that, you know, in this case, the theater, which, or, you know, St. Mark's or any one of these, they're simply used as icons rather than, you know, a greater planning language or urban landscape or whatever kind of aspects he took from Venice. So I think just personally for me, that's a really interesting point of reflection.
Thank you. This was my point, so thank you.
All right, Daniele, we're going to let you go. And my final point for you, it's not a question either, is that you yourself said that you're not a Venetian architectural scholar. I think we all can unanimously agree here that you're the closest thing to it, given that you studied in Venice, you live in Venice. So we're going to bestow some kind of honorary Venetian architectural scholar on you here today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott, for inviting and hosting me. And well,
I would like also to thank Daniele. Hi, Daniele. I'm Francesco.
Hi, Francesco. Hi. Thank you for inviting me.
And thank you for your very stimulating lecture. As you know, I have also a deep love with Paulo Mendes da Rocha, and so I think your approach to show this relationship between Paolo and Venice could be very stimulating for the Venice studio. Thank you again.
Thank you too.
Agreed. All the students listening, no doubt, have taken a lot from this lecture. So thank you again, Daniele. Have a pleasant day wherever you may be in Italy. Thank you, Francesco, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you. Bye.